Our world is filled with millions of different living things. Some, like the deep sea giants we rarely see, are so outlandish and incredible it's hard to believe they really live among us. Yet despite the staggering biodiversity that surrounds us humans have imagined droves of mythical creatures to enrich our mythologies. Griffins, pegasi, dragons. There's no shortage of fantastical creatures on our own little world. But this phenomenon isn't limited to Earth. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, people dreamt up just as many mythical creatures to entertain themselves. There's just one catch. In a galaxy as vast as that, it turns out that not all those mythological beings were made up. Some, like the Molitor from old Iranian mythology, or the Noga Maktu from the planet Vodran, were certainly figments of their creators' imaginations. Other legends, however, turned out to be a lot more real than one might have initially expected. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at some of these mythical beings that prove to be less myth and more true story, no matter how crazy they seem.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Those who have played Jedi Fallen Order will already be familiar with our first entry on this list, the Shyyyo Bird. Native to the Roshir forests of the planet Kashyyyk, these colossal birds were the things of legends. The Shyyyo Bird was covered in silvery grey feathers along its neck, body, and arms. Unlike many birds, the bones of its massive arms were distinct and covered in the short feathers we just mentioned, whereas the main flight feathers that were attached onto them were much longer and transparently iridescent. They were thin enough that light could pass through them, and when it did, it was refracted into myriads of small rainbows. Another defining feature was the Shyyyo Bird's hard, keratinous mask that covered the top of its head down to its peak and ended in two huge, pointed horns that protruded out of its head. The final detail was that the bird was said to be blue-blooded, literally, not figuratively, although very little could actually damage them. Now, to make it clear, when we say these creatures were massive, we mean massive. Although we don't have sources for their average size, if we use Cal Kestis as a scale to measure its length from beak to tail tip, it would have to be between 10 to 15 meters long. As for its wingspan, the average human is 1.8 meters tall, and if we were to use wings and fly, those wings would need to be at least 6.7 meters long. We think you can draw your own conclusions about the Shyyyo from those rough numbers. For the longest time, they were thought to be creatures of legend, of myths told among the Wookiees. Shyyyo birds, it was told, preyed on the sligs and the vishoks in the dense Kashyyyk forest, creatures that were extremely dangerous even to the powerful Wookiees. Because of these stories told about them hunting these fierce carnivores, Shyyyo birds were regarded as a symbol of hope and peace, and seeing one was said to be a sign of eternal peace for the lucky. For something so huge, there were no known sightings even remotely close to living memory until Cal Kestis climbed the Tree of Life in 14 BBY during the Imperial occupation of Kashyyyk. Imperial forces injured a Shyyyo bird, which Cal helped recover. Later on, when he was confronted by the Ninth Sister and her forces, the Shyyyo bird returned to ferry him to safety atop its back, proving once and for all that it was more than a myth. From the lush forests of Kashyyyk, our next entry brings us to the world of Malastare in the Mid-Rim, where the native Dug population immortalized the fearsome Zillo Beasts in their legends. As we're sure many of you already know, they were gargantuan, semi-sentient reptiles with a passion for killing. Although they were the size of a large dog at birth, they could grow huge, standing at over 97 meters tall. Their thick hides were impervious to all energy weapons, leaving them to attack with their gaping maws, four-clawed limbs, their massive tail, or even their back arms, an appendage that grew out of their backs. To grow to such immense sizes, Zillo Beasts consumed energy and things that moved, making them hard to kill. Once upon a time, the stories went, Malastare was absolutely infested with them, which was incredibly unfortunate for the natives. However, once the Dugs realized that Malastarian fuel, a resource found in the planet's core, was highly toxic to the Zillo Beasts, they used it to drive them to extinction. ridding their people of these nightmarish predators once and for all. However, a prophecy foretold that one Zillo Beast remained, and it would return one day to bring the end of the Dug civilization. Countless generations of Dugs kept these legends alive, hoping to prepare their descendants for the prophesied danger. Of course, as fans of the Clone Wars know, proton bombs used during the Battle of Malastare awoke a dormant Zillo Beast, which ran rampant. It took considerable effort to subdue it, at which point it was transported to Coruscant, where Palpatine hoped to study its energy-resistant hide. The beast, however, ended up breaking free and rampaging through the capital, making it the most widely seen mythological creature to date. We're fairly sure the residents of Coruscant weren't very happy about it either. A list like this wouldn't be complete without the poster children for mythological beasts, the Mythosaurs. It's literally in the name. Native to the planet Mandalore, Mythosaurs are the OG creatures of legend, with a mythos surrounding them that's so potent, they continue to be the inspiration for a huge number of people well past the last confirmed sighting. These gigantic beasts could grow up to 15 meters in length. We don't know too much about their biology, but we know they had scales, yellow eyes, and two large, extremely sharp tusks they used to catch prey or fight off competitors. They were also able to survive on both land and underwater, and in canon stories, placed them living mainly in the waters under the mines of Mandalore. In canon, the legends told us that once upon a time, the mighty Mythosaurs ruled the planet, dominating over all other forms of life thanks to their great size and power. When the first Mandalorian settlers touched upon the planet, Mandalore the Great, an ancient ruler of the Mandalorians, tamed and rode them. Other stories claim Mandalorians rode them while they were still wild and untamed, which would have been even more impossible, but either way, they're connected directly to the Mandalorians' incredible growth in power and influence. Although they were believed to have gone extinct before the Mandalorian cataclysm ruined most of the planet's surface, they remained a symbol of the Mandalorians, who used its skull as a crest to symbolize their strength. Some, of course, doubted that the creatures had ever existed, believing them to be no more than tall tales told to impressionable foundlings. Legends give us a different side of this story, however. According to the legends, the Mandalorians had hunted the Mythosaurs to extinction, using them as prey to prove their superior might. Whichever the case may have been, a legend persisted that one day, a Mythosaur would rise again to herald a new age of Mandalore. This prophecy sounds particularly weighty because, as fans who've kept up with The Mandalorian definitely recall, a Mythosaur was spotted swimming in the living waters under the mines of Mandalore. With the latest season of The Mandalorian ending with the reclamation of Mandalore, we can only hope the legend is true and these people can finally catch the break they deserve. Our final entry is way less wholesome. These creatures were less the subject of an old fable and more the nightmarish protagonists of smugglers' horror stories. We're talking, of course, about the Starweirds, a creature truly fitting the name. To put it bluntly, Starweirds were absolutely horrific and something straight out of a Resident Evil game. They were very tall, skeletal thin, and pale, like floating, shriveled corpses. Long white tufts of hair and rags of clothing clung to their heads and bodies, floating around them ghoulishly, even if gravity was at full force, which it really wasn't, because these happy things only lived in the absolute vacuum of deep space. Their eyes were a hellishly glowing white, their mouths gaping and filled with teeth, and hands that ended in 3 freakishly long fingers, equipped with black talons for just the added effect. Their faces, shriveled as they were, somehow managed to look just like that of their intended victims by some accounts, which only adds to their horror. Starweirds were rarely encountered. As we mentioned, they lived in deep space. When a smuggler did run across them, however, he'd die to regret it. These nightmares waited until a spacer had to repair their ship in deep space, or for a vessel traveling through their territory, and then they would apparate in front of their victims, unleashing a horrific telepathic screech that caused anything within a 20-meter radius to cower in fear. And then, one by one, the Starweird would set upon them, tearing them apart with its claws. They loathed Force sensitives more than anything and went out of their way to kill them dead over anything else. And the kicker? No one was sure if they were real. By all accounts, from the few who were able to shake the telepathic effects off and fight back, the Starweirds weren't corporeal, meaning they were intangible spirits floating above ground at a pace slightly faster than humans. They were the things of smugglers' tales, the creepy pastas the spacers told around the cantina to scare one another. The Jedi thought they might be manifestations of the dark side itself, but it can never be proven. The best chance the Jedi ever got of studying one was during the Great Galactic War, when the Starweird Queen attacked most of the Jedi Council and a Padawan named Zarenda. The Queen was considered a legend even among the ghost stories, so the Jedi were ill-prepared to deal with her. They were all saved when Zarenda's master, Wai'elet, stepped in to take the Queen down, even if it resulted in his capture by the reconstituted Sith Empire. Of all the creatures we've looked at today, this is definitely the one we wish were nothing more than an old spacer's tale. But alas, there were many things that went bump in the dark, vacuum space in a galaxy far, far away, and all one could do was be prepared. Because in space, no one can hear you scream, but the Starweird never got that memo. What do you think? Do you know of any other creatures of legend in Star Wars that were less legendary than people believed? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks.